Just starting. Hello, oh, that's awfully close. Hello, Instagram friends. Hello, other people friends. It is Locked On Jazz for the 9th of January. The Jazz rolling again with another blowout win. We'll break it down and look at the Jazz performance. Frankly, might cause Quinn Snyder a little bit of a problem. We'll talk about it all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow! How are you? It's a live edition of Locked On Jazz, coming to you live on Instagram at DLock09. Also coming to you live on Locked On Live on YouTube, on Twitch, and Facebook. Coming to you live on Periscope at Locked On Sports. So excited to have you with us. Thanks so much for tuning in. The Jazz have won 7 straight. They've won 12 of their last 13. They blew out the New York Knicks exactly like they should last night to make this one nice and easy. By the way, if you're an NBA fan, we've upped the game on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On NBA Net. So please feel free to grab that if you'd like to. Live shows, I really want your questions today. I've got a bunch of things for you to open it up, but then I've got second and third segments completely set aside for you and what you have and your thoughts. And I know there's been a lot of various questions on Postcast recently with Ron Boone, and we've decided to, kind of push those to this show. So I'm hoping that this will be a good one for you today to get a lot of those kind of big picture questions you want to get in about the team today. So let's do that. All right, so the Jazz blew out the Knicks last night. Quick summary last night is they just did exactly what they wanted to, but that's, I've been sitting here telling you that, hey, there are no bad teams in the NBA. I lied. There's a bad team in the NBA. It's the Knicks, particularly without Marcus Morris and without Julius Randle. That's not a good basketball team last night. The Jazz did exactly what they should have done last night, which is they knocked that team out early in the ballgame, and then they let go of the rope early in the third quarter, and the Jazz just blitzed them. Absolutely blitzed them early in the third quarter last night. And I think that's what you're supposed to do. We kept the minutes down. We're able to execute it. I actually thought it was a night, watching warm-ups, watching Donovan recently. If that had been a close game going against his hometown team, if there was a night where Donovan was going to drop a 50, I thought it was last night. He's very subtly picked up his game. Donovan was averaging 25 points a game recently while shooting 30% from three. All of a sudden, Donovan in the last 6 games is shooting 40% from three again. So you can see he has the flow a little bit. He has his rhythm at a little bit of a higher level than it was with his shot. The impressive one about Donovan had figured out how to shoot 50% from the field recently while not shooting his three well, which is another sign of his amazing development this year and all the growth that he's having. And so to see that take place, and now all of a sudden you can see him kind of getting his legs under. He's putting the amount of work that Donovan Mitchell is putting in right now to be great is absolutely incredible. I don't want to get into all of it. He doesn't do it. It's interesting to me. What I would share with you about Donovan, he's pretty active on social networking. He does not share anything that's self-grandizing, which is really interesting to me about him. There's, in a day and age where everybody wants every workout and every extra effort and every other piece that's out there to be thrown out there, Donovan doesn't share any of that. So that just just trust me, he's working amazingly hard right now to get better and better and better at his craft at all times, and yet is doing it privately, which is really impressive to what he's doing as a player and how he's growing. The best story of the year is Emmanuel Mudiay. And last night was interesting because with the Knicks in town, that was the storyline coming into the game, was Emmanuel Mudiay. And what was interesting to me is the Knicks personnel did not seem to have a large problem with who Emmanuel Mudiay was as a player who came to Utah. They actually referred to him as their best player on their team last year. I don't know if this is going to work on Instagram, but we'll try it. No. And a bunch of aspects of that in which he, hey, he was our leading scorer. He won a bunch of games for us. He was our best guy late in games. And that's, obviously interesting for us to hear because the Emmanuel Mudiay that we got did not feel like that. The Emmanuel Mudiay that we got felt like a player that really needed to have his game refined and was a little too selfish, that didn't pass the ball, didn't move the ball like we want to. And yet from a Knicks standpoint, they were like, oh, he was great. And he's a wonderful kid. That's the first thing. And he's still so young. It's too bad we only have him on a 1-year deal. I don't think we have bird rights on him. So I think it'll be hard for us to be able to try to hold on to him. Actually, I think he's earning himself a lot of money right now, which is great. I mean, that's the whole point. And, the rest of the league takes notice of that. And then you have that in your back pocket as having done that for someone. And you probably get other players of similar ilk that you're able to do that with because it's clear that our group develops. I thought it was a great comment by Emmanuel after the game on a question that was asked. I think it might have actually been by our Jazz broadcast assistant, Amanda Smith, who was filling in last night for Christian, who was under the weather. And she asked him, and congratulations to Amanda, she'll make her Pac-12 analyst debut this week, calling the women's Pac-12 Utah, UCLA, and Utah USC game. So good luck to her on that on the Pac-12 network. But Mudiay said, I always thought I was a pretty smart player. I thought I knew the game really, really well. And then I came to Quinn Snyder, and now it's on a totally different level. I've completely bought in. He's just a great story of what he's done, what he's built, how he's evolved. And it was interesting. I was talking to Ed, their radio voice. I was talking to Rebecca Harlow, their analyst. I was talking to Wally Zerbiak before the game, about the team, about Mudiay, how he's been. I said, he's just added so much. He used to just be one-dimensional. He drove. It was going to be kind of this running shot or him trying to get to the rim. And now, you'll see him dribble around on the search dribble or Nash dribble and come around the other side and find someone. First play of the game, he comes around on it. He's in the game. Boom, hits Bojan for a 3. And he's just become a totally different player with his eyes open. And, I've actually thought Quinn Snyder was interesting. He said, with him, it's everything. It's how he checks into games, which he'd never really done before, how he checks out of games, and what his approach and his mood is on everything. He has been just terrific. And deserves a huge amount of credit. And he could have gotten bummed a little bit by the Clarkson acquisition. And he actually seems to, the time, when Jeff Green left and Mudiay, they were like best friends, he actually seems to have been kind of uplifted in that realm, or at least having a different approach that's been super impressive by him in that part. So I think Emmanuel Mudiay is becoming the feel-good story of the year. Now, what's interesting about that is the easy way to integrate Mike Conley was to stop playing Emmanuel Mudiay. With the addition of Jordan Clarkson, and probably I still think that Mike Conley is a starter, and I'm sure we'll get into this with a lot of questions. He certainly has proved that over his NBA career, and how you reintegrate him into this team, I think will be interesting. The trick on that is that the easy answer was you just brought him in a 9-man rotation, and you didn't play Emmanuel Mudiay. Mudiay has earned himself time on the floor. That's what's really crazy here, is that was the easy answer to all of this with Clarkson acquisition. I don't think that's an option right now. Emmanuel's just been too good, too solid, too consistent. Now, Rajon Tucker's playing a little bit, but it's going to be tricky on how you integrate all of those minutes and into that time. But this team is playing great. They've won 7 straight. They've won 12 of 13. They did exactly what they were supposed to do last night. They get the Hornets coming in here Friday before we go back out on the road for a Washington. And then we got to go back out on the road for a set of games against kind of teams that you say, well, you should be able to beat, except for they're all playing pretty well. Brooklyn's not. Brooklyn's having a struggle right now. But Washington beat Houston, Boston, and Denver, I think, in the last week. So that'll be interesting. I think they got blown out by Orlando last night, though. New Orleans, we already just saw, and then Brooklyn in the middle of that one. So that'll be interesting to see if we can go get Charlotte and keep adding on to this along the way. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Murdoch Hyundai. I just got an email from longtime listener Spencer Wixom, and I'm going to meet him over at Murdoch Hyundai on Friday and say hi to him as I'm changing in my new car and getting the new Palisade, the 8-seater that's been taking kind of the automotive world by storm that Hyundai has out there. I'm going to actually get that on Friday and get to try it out, so I'll be able to tell you firsthand what that's like. But I'm going to meet Spencer over there while I'm changing cars so he can go look at a Palisade himself. He'll end up buying the one I'm going to get, and I'm not going to get it. I'm going to be so bummed. I'm going to be mad at Spencer. But if you're going to Murdoch Hyundai or you're looking for cars right now, add Hyundai to the list. You'll just get huge value for your dollar. And make sure you let me know. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com, and then I'll email out ahead and find out who you should meet with so you can walk in, be a rock star, and get treated like you should be as a Locked On Jazz listener. So thank you very much for all you who've supported Murdoch Hyundai, but they're a great lineup of cars. The Santa Fe, the Tucson, the Kona, and now the big Palisade. Excited to get to try it this week. And there's also the Sonata and the Elantra. All right. It is Locked On Jazz. Make sure you follow Locked On NBA Net on Instagram and on Twitter. Oh, that's nice. From Sri Lanka, Azir says, I love Grip 6. Got it shipped all the way to Sri Lanka. That's awesome. All right, let me get to some of the questions. We're both live on Instagram at DLock09. We're also live on Locked On Live on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And we're live on Locked On Sports on Periscope and on Facebook. So let's get to some of the questions today. What are Mitchell's numbers at the rim this year versus last? That's a good question. You know, the big thing about Donovan, and we'd actually have to break it down a little bit more detailed than what you're asking me, but I'm going to pull a quick one if I can, is how has it evolved as the season's gone on? So the big question on Donovan, and frankly, the little bit of the concern on Donovan was his lack of getting to the rim. And that, I think, was probably the most concerning thing that was going on with Donovan there for a while. I'm going to use Cleaning the Glass for these numbers. I really like that site. I think it does a good job. Basketball Reference does a pretty good job with it also. But shooting frequency at the rim, Donovan has still dropped. He went from 31 to 29 to 24%. I'll be able to pull something else up. So his amount of shots at the rim is still way down. His short mid-range floater numbers are way up. He's taking 30% of his shots there. He's got to get to the rim more. His finishing is back up at 62%, which is what it was his rookie year. I have a Excel sheet that is not as quick as any of these other things, in which I chart their shot distribution game by game, and that's a little bit harder. These live shows. It's funny is kind of when I follow the show or all of our shows on the network every now and then I'll get on some of our hosts like, you got to be prepared for this. On the live shows, you never know what's quite coming, and so I'm never quite as prepared as I should be on this. But let me see if I can pull up quickly what he's done recently. And see if I can get an answer for you on that. And I won't if my lucky password, which broke Joe Ingles out of his... Wonder why my password says, did it expire and I'm not going to be able to get anything? Yep. I'm not going to be able to get that for you. I don't have it updated since Chicago. NBA resets their passwords like every 30 days, and I'm never organized enough to do it, so I'm now behind on... that's not going to update until I reach out to the NBA. So... that's too bad. Recently, so I have it through Chicago. He wasn't taking a great deal more rim shots. His floater is just incredible right now. And what Quinn's done in regards to that is they've changed the angles by which Donovan is getting to the basket. Everything was kind of coming straight at a dropping big, and that floater, while he's going full steam, now he's coming at different angles in different spots in different times to be able to change that up a little bit. So that's been a great help to that. From Alden Miles on Periscope, do you think there's any incentive for the Jazz to delay his return? I think he's talking about, he's got two messages here. Conley's contract guarantees at 55 games played. Does this affect the way his injury is handled? I believe that contract's already guaranteed from last year. That's my understanding. I could be wrong on that. If Andy Larson or someone like that was listening right now, they would correct me. But my understanding of the way that contract was written with Mike Conley is that if he played 55 games in either of this season or last season, his contract for 2021 was guaranteed. So I believe it's already guaranteed, and now it's a player option for Mike Conley of whether or not he wants to pick up that option for this next year or not. That's the way I believe I understand it. From Brian over at Facebook, you always talk about if a player's bad pack doesn't play on a team, then the team is better. Will this be the case with Mike Conley returns to us? Will we be better or worse when he's on the floor since this turnaround? Now, it's a great question, Brian. I think we'll see with Miami, Justice Winslow has been a huge negative. They got rid of Dion Waiters, who was a huge negative, and suddenly they've gotten better, and everyone's wondering why. So I do think that that's the case. If Mike Conley is a negative 1.9, like he was to start the year, then yes, it will hurt us. It will hurt us considerably. We will not be the number one offensive team in the league as we have been over the last 13 games, and the number two offensive team that we've been since December 1st. If Mike Conley can return to kind of his average level that he was last year and has been for much of his career, then it will not hurt us. Then it's another positive points gain player. Mike's been generally a positive points gain player for most of his career. His lack of going to the rim this year has been a little different than it has been in the past, and his reliance on that floater and then not getting the free throw line is a little disconcerting because makes it a difficult way to live. Last year, though, Mike was a 0.4 positive. He went to the rim, he went to the free throw line 13% of his possessions and shot a three 30% of his possessions, and made his shots. This year, just as uncomfortable as Mike was. And thus far this year is a minus 1.8. He's only going to the rim 9.6% of his possessions. He's shooting the three at 30%. So if he can get that 9.8 back up to 13%, take the same amount of threes, make some of his shots, he'll be able to do it. It's going to be really interesting to watch how he melds back into the team. He was shooting 36% on twos and 36% on threes. He is one of the best catch and shoot open three-point shooters in the NBA, and one of the big changes that's happened recently with the Jazz is the fact that that QSQ number we talk about on the show, which is quantified shot quality, keeps just hiking up. So the Jazz for the year are 15th. They were about 20th since December 1. I think the Jazz are about 10th in the league in shot quality, and if we take it, if we start to try to really fiddle in with it and try to make it positive for us and start altering the dates on it, I think I think we could actually even make it better as well. I mean, I think that's and so we're seeing the Jazz, start to get a little bit better. If we go to the Jordan Clarkson trade day, frankly, and take it from December 24th to now, and just those games, our quantified shot quality, I'm looking this up for the first time myself, our quantified shot quality is actually down a little bit. That's interesting. We're 19th in the league in quantified shot quality. We're just shooting unbelievable lights out. That's an interesting note. I don't know what I think of that. We're shooting unnaturally well for the shots we're getting since over the last 6 games. We're at plus 9 QSI over our... So that's a little... It's worth kind of keeping an eye on of what's sustainable and what's not. That's not a great note. Over the last 30 games, taking us back to, or 30 days, taking us back to December 9th when, that's our loss to Oklahoma City, but then things kind of click in. Right after that, we've moved up to 10th in quantified shot quality. So, I'll be interesting. That's a good little, let's remember that. Like, we might have just found something that's worth kind of keeping a little bit of an eye on and trying to keep there. So thank you, Brian. Great question. Led us to something interesting. Tad Olson, how come we're happy with high usage, trigger happy Clarkson, but when Mudio did it and slowed the offense, it didn't fit into the offense? Well, one, because Clarkson's a better shooter. He can hit about 36% of his threes. So I think that's part of it. But I do think, I commented last night, I thought Clarkson was stopping the ball a little bit more than he had in the past. That there was really him going one-on-one and dribbling in a little bit of a way. And that shot quality note we just had right there is not a great note, that maybe some of the shot quality is not quite as good. So there's probably a great question there, Tad, and some evolution that still needs to be taking place on that front. So that's a pretty good point on your point. I think we were just excited to get any bounce at all off the bench and add another scorer. And then at the same time, when Conley comes back and there's higher quality players on the floor, Jordan's probably got to do a little bit more moving, and I think you'll see that. I mean, remember, this team threw 240 passes on its first night of the year and is now throwing about 350 every night. So you're seeing a real evolution of this team as it grows. From Twitch, from Superfin23, can Mudiay fit in long-term plans of this team? I do think he can. I do think it's going to be hard contractually. My understanding of his deal is it's just a one-year deal. Could be wrong here. That we don't have any bird rights on him. So that if he gets an offer, we would have to use an exception or cap space to be able to extend that or to match that offer. And I think that I think it'll be hard. It also depends on what teams out there think that Mudiay has really turned a corner and they believe in him enough so that he becomes somebody they're willing to invest free agent money in. I think that would be the other question that has to come out to you through that. We are live today on Locked On Live on the show, so that's Instagram, DLock09. You can also follow me on Snap at DLock9. We are live at Locked On Live on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, Locked On Sports on Facebook and on Periscope, which is Twitter. So thank you very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Rejecting the Screen goes ISO every Thursday with a long-form interview section. Make sure you go grab that today when you're done with today's program. That's always a fun one. Noah and Adam do really, really great work on that and bring you to fabulous, kind of interesting insight into players you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. So make sure you grab that. Sorry, I was trying to pull something up and it wasn't seemingly playing along like it's supposed to. All right, let's get back to your questions. What will the rotation look like when Conley returns? This is the great question. That's from our Periscope account. I don't know. I mean, Mike's a starter. I'd be, unless Mike comes to Quinn and says I'm interested in coming off the bench to integrate back into this team, which I just don't think Mike's ready to do at this point in his career and go from being a 21 point a game scorer, borderline all-star last year, to a sixth man at some point in his career maybe, but I'm not sure it's now. So that's the first part. And so, how do you get Donovan to have the ball in his hands as much? How do you have Joe Ingles to have the ball in his hands as much? I think Mike has to evolve a little bit there. I think the first half of the season, the team, or when Mike was playing, the team was trying to adjust to Mike to get the most out of Mike. I think Mike's going to have to adjust to the team now. I think that's going to be a flip on how this works, and that's going to be different for him. This is Donovan's team, and I think there's a real parallel between what happened with Denver a few years ago when Paul Millsap came to Denver. Very similar to Mike Conley, right? Like this ultimate pro, all-star, borderline all-star player, been there, has an aura about him. The rest of the league admires and looks up to him. Perfect teammate, great community guy. He goes to Denver, and Denver was all kind of screwed up when Millsap got there. And late in games, they were going to Millsap, and Jokic wasn't engaged. And then Millsap got hurt, and Jokic took over the team. And when Millsap came back, he was like, Nikola, it's your team. Go to work. It's your team. And I think we might have done the same thing here. That I think Donovan, just because he's just the dearest hearted, best kid on the planet, was really deferential to Mike and his spot in the league and who he is. I mean, you even have the videos of them working the offseason and Donovan's asking Mike questions. And it's Donovan's team now. Like, this is Donovan's show and Rudy's show defensively and offensively. And now Mike's got to integrate back into that. Very similar to the way I think Millsap did with Jokic. That's what I see. Now, how it works in rotation gets complicated. I mean, I think Rajon Tucker's 6 minutes go away, but that's not enough. So Joe Ingles goes from 34 minutes to 28. Okay. Now we're at 10 minutes and I don't know. Like, so Donovan goes from 34 to 30, but I don't want Donovan off the floor. I think it's very complicated. Royce O'Neal probably drops a few, and I don't know about closing games because I'll tell you what, Royce O'Neal's rebounding is a major reason we are good right now. Royce O'Neal's rebounding is a big, big deal. And you go back to that Clippers game we lost, we didn't have the rebounding to make the plays late in that game. So it is going to be complicated, and it is not going to be easy. I think there's two ways to look at it. One is if we were rolling right now and we made a trade for Mike Conley out of Memphis having won 7 straight and 12 of 13, and we acquired Mike Conley tomorrow, we would all think it makes us a title contender, right, to win it. So I think you have to view it that way. But at the same time, it would not be an easy process to bring him in. And so I think that that's kind of where we are. You have to almost look at it that this is our trade deadline acquisition. It's a big-time trade deadline acquisition. It's one of the best shooters in the league, one of the late-game clutch players. You can't leave. No one's leaving Mike Conley open. It's going to give you more space and get things done. But it also adds to the mix of how you're getting things done. So it's interesting. Are you worried we are going to lose Royce to another high-paying team? Yes, I am. Whoa, I just knocked over the Instagram feed. Yes, I am. There aren't many wing players. It's a small free agency. Royce has become good. I do think that Royce is helped by who he's playing with and how he's being used here. But I think that Royce is, I am I concerned? Worried is the word you use? Yeah, sure. I like Royce an awful lot. I want Royce on this team. I think Royce does really big things, and so am I worried? Yes. Do I think the Jazz have interest in keeping Royce? Yes. But I answering your question exactly as you asked it, and am I worried? Sure. That I think it's a limited free agent market. I think Royce is a good player. I think that he'll have a marketplace out there. Now we can also still sign him to an extension at some point, so maybe he never gets there. Ryan wants to know, will more players in need of development consider the Jazz due to Moutier's success? That's the concept. I mean, we have a reputation around the league as Dennis Lindsay and Justin Zanuck in the front office having built, and Quinn Snyder's coaching staff having coached this development program where players improve and get better. And so that is the concept. Absolutely 100% is that by Moutier having this success, other players will want to come and play for the Utah Jazz. David Nelson, Bojan plays more efficient with Conley. Do you think those two always be grouped together when Conley returns? That's interesting. I didn't know that to be true. I haven't looked at that. I will have to take a look at that. We have bona fide offensive players in Donovan, Conley, Bojan, Ingles, Moutier to some extent, Jordan Clarkson. We're always going to be able to now have 2 or 3 offensive threats on the floor at all times. It's really great. It's a really big difference to where we were before, and generally efficient offensive players along the way. Has any Jazz player ever started his time as perfectly? Clarkson and Tucker were 7-0 since signing him. Yeah, I mean, the schedule was nice and they've played great. They've been a huge difference. And we wouldn't be 7-0 without them, frankly. Right? I mean, the bench has made plays and won games for us. Davis and Green are struggling in the system. Well, Green is gone. But is there a concern for players looking to come here? Well, I mean, I guess it could go both ways, right? Emmanuel, that's from our Instagram account. Let's be honest, right? So Moutier's been great, and Jeff Green didn't work out, and Ed Davis has had a hard time figuring out how to fit in or what to do. I did not read it. I know Ben Dowsett wrote a piece at Forbes about Ed Davis's struggles. It has, Ed Davis, I still think, is a vital piece to what's going on. I like what I'm seeing out of Tony Bradley. I'm in the bag for Tony Bradley as a person. He's 22 years old. He's working hard. He's got some unique skills. He runs the floor brilliantly. It's going to be interesting to see as we get closer and closer to playoffs and games ratchet up. Like, Tony's still flawed. He's 22 years old, inexperienced, fouls too much. He goes and commits those fouls in the penalty. Those are big fouls, and they hurt you. He commits them in the beginning of the quarter and get in the penalty faster. Those hurt you. So I'm not quite ready to say Ed Davis is never going to be an important part of this group. I think it's right to let Tony Bradley have an opportunity to try to make this growth step and continue to get better. And I think Tony Bradley was super important in the New Orleans win specifically. He stole a bunch of possessions. But there are still areas in Tony Bradley's development that need to improve for Tony to be able to be a viable playoff player for this team. And, in the playoffs, some of his fouls that he's making right now, those are problematic in those games. And I'm not entirely sure what happens to him in that setting. So I think I wouldn't close the door on Ed Davis as important to this franchise quite yet. Is Donovan a for sure all-star? Ben Golliver and I did Locked on NBA late last night. It's available to you right now. He does not have Donovan as an all-star. He has Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul getting in. So, and he has Rudy Gobert getting in. So he thinks it's hard for the Jazz to get two players. I think we better keep winning. Get ourselves up another. We're fifth in the West. Can we get to fourth? Can we get to third? Can we get to second by the time that voting takes place? And suddenly be the story of the league when the votes are happening, I think would be vital here. But, I think it's a 12-man team and you start to walk down it. You got LeBron and AD, you got Jokic, you've got Harden, you've got Kawhi, you've got PG, you've got Luka Doncic, you got Dame Lillard. We're at 8 right there. There's 4 more spots that go, and I don't know if I'm, hopefully if Steph gets voted on or something like that, then you lose another one. And so, I think that you're Brandon Ingram and Rudy Gobert. I think you're Russell Westbrook, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell. And maybe there's enough spots. If we have 8, unless I forgot someone, I had it down at 9. I'm trying to think if I just forgot somebody. And Jamal Murray probably has a claim as well, with Denver being 26-11. We're a game behind Denver for the second spot in the West. Can we keep winning and suddenly be, have won 10 straight or 11 of 12 or 15 of 17 or something like that and be the second team in the West when the voting gets done? I think that would matter a great deal. Let me take 1 or 2 more questions here. Great job, you guys. You're the best. Does the Jazz front office feel the need to add another big, or has Tony proven that isn't a need? I was thinking maybe if the Jazz would go pick up pop-up big would be help from Mike Conley. Joshua, that's from Joshua McCaffrey at Facebook. Those are good thoughts. I think I just addressed the Tony Bradley thing. The development's going well. He's doing a lot of great things. He was vital in a win the other night, but there are still pieces there, and that's a huge evaluation point that the front office has to make. And I think that that's I think that's a great question. And then the popping big, opening up the middle for Conley would be interesting. Everyone's talking about Andre Iguodala going somewhere. What is the likelihood? The Jazz would have had to trade Dante for Andre Iguodala. That would have been the move, is Dante Exum for Andre Iguodala. They Dante Exum for Jordan Clarkson instead. Seems to have been a better choice for the Jazz. We'll see where Iguodala ends up and who's willing to do it. Out of sight, out of mind gets interesting on that one a little bit. A lot of more questions on Conley, and I don't have answers of minute restrictions. I don't have answers of his ETA. I don't have answers on who is affected most by Conley. I think it's going to be a process to bring back, again, I would think about it this way. When Mike Conley comes back, it's as though we just made a trade, gave up nothing on a team that's red hot, and added a borderline all-star clutch player for a chance to try to run to win the conference and win the title. That's the way I think you have to look at this coming up here, is I think that's the answer. Thank you very much to Chad, who says, love your passion for the NBA. Thanks for doing your homework and sharing with us. It's my pleasure. You guys are the best. I thought last night was awesome. Right before the game, there was just a juice and a vibe in the building that you could just feel that Jazz fans just know their team. They understand what's going on. They know they just came back from a 3-0 road trip. They want to say thank you. The starting lineup cheers were a little louder than they've been all year long. That's where this fan base is just really special and really unique. And you can't be really unique. You can only be unique. So I wanted to say thanks to you guys on that. It's an awesome thing to have this job and to have this reaction with you. I know I missed a bunch of questions. Thank you, though, for your involvement. and Connection will be back with you Friday. And again, thanks to everybody who's been sharing how you can listen on your home speakers to Jazz Radio. That's really cool. So I think you can tell your smart devices to play 1280 The Zone in Salt Lake, or you play it off the Utah Jazz app and stream it over to your Mini, and then you have the radio broadcast in the house. That's great to hear. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. This has been Locked On Jazz. I did Locked On NBA today with Ben Golliver. So why don't you tell your smart device right now to play the most recent episode of podcast Locked On NBA. Have a great one.